So this is game two of the 6-game match between me and another player in early 2018. So since this is game two, I'm white and my opponent was black. Again, the time control was game in 90 with a 5-second delay. So I started e4. I'm an e4 player, and my opponent played the French e6. This is it's more common definitely as players are over, say, 1400 or so, and it's a counter-attacking defense. And notice a lot of people, they like to play as black. They play e5, c5, or d5 for the main reason that it stops d4. If white is able to play both e4 and d4, they get a good center. And e5, c5, d5, they all stop that in one way or another. e5 stops it because if white plays d4, black can take. c5 does the same thing. And d5, if white plays d4, black will take on e4. So with the French, white can play d4 right away, and black is not going to be able to take back. Instead, black will still a counterattack with d5, and white could take on d5. White could take. But usually white doesn't want to do this because now notice white and black both have open lines for their bishops. Nobody's ahead on development. It's a pretty even game here. White's still got a slight advantage because white is moving next, but there's not going to be much of an advantage here for white. So this is called the exchange French. Some people like to go into this because there's not a whole lot to remember, not a whole lot of theory, but white really can't claim much of an advantage if he does decide to take. So usually if white wants an advantage, they play knight c3, and black in this game played knight f6, which attacks e4 again, and now I expand e5, and the knight's got to go somewhere. Knight fd7, f4 to support the center more, and c5. And now we kind of see why I played f4. Blacks, and pretty much all Frenches, d4 is the main target for the black pieces. d4 is going to come under constant attack, as we see. c5 is the first move that does it, but there's going to be some others as well. If d4 is undermined, then e5 can become weak. So white played f4 earlier to help support e5. Knight f3 to help support d4. Knight c6, which again attacks the d4 square. Bishop e3 to support d4 once again. And queen b6, which again indirectly attacks d4. It also throws an attack at b2. So let's see, if we count, there's 3 attackers on d4, the queen, the knight on c6, and the pawn. And there's 3 defenders of d4, the white queen, the dark squared bishop on e3, and the knight on f3. But the pawn on b2 is attacked, and there's no defender right now. So I played knight a4, which does 2 things. It attacks the queen and defends the b2 pawn. Queen a5 check. And now c3 solidifies d4 just a little bit more, and it also protects the knight by the queen. The queen now is covering, going diagonal. C takes, knight takes, and then a6. And at this point in the game, I got a little worried because I thought that if black had played knight takes d4, that my knight was going to be in trouble. Because after bishop takes b5, my knight's got nowhere to go, right? My knight can't go to c5. It's covered by both the black knight, and the dark squared bishop, and it's only covered by my dark squared bishop, so 2 attackers, 1 defender. Can't go to b6. I don't have time to play b4 because black will just take. So if I play knight c5, this isn't so bad because take, pork, but then I'm gonna end up losing a couple of pawns, and I'm in serious trouble here. There's a pass pawn on the d file, and then they're gonna have 2 versus 1. So that's gonna be bad. And then even if I do this fork here, this is a little bit better, but it's still going to be a pawn here, right? White's only got 2 pawns and black has 3, so white still lost a pawn. White's still got to defend that pawn, and that pawn's going to be kind of hard to hold on to. So actually, neither of us really went in for this. Black played a6 to prepare d5 first, which means after I took on c6, take, I played b4 first to get the queen out of there and to get a new square b2 for my knight. Queen c7, a3, f6. E takes, knight takes, d3. And now we kind of see one of the problems of the French that black has. The light squared bishop is in prison here. He's got nowhere to go right now. The e6 pawn is blocking him in. The a6 pawn is blocking him in. Black has not solved the light squared bishop problem yet. Black is looking to play e5 pretty soon, and finally that light squared bishop is able to get out, which is what happened. He ended up getting a pretty good game in this. But if that light squared bishop doesn't get out, black's going to have a tough time. Bishop d6, castle kingside, castle kingside. g3, I was a little worried about my f4 pawn because the queen and bishop were attacking, and if the knight moves, then the rook is going to be able to attack f4 as well, so I just wanted to overprotect it. And now black plays e5, which is what they wanted to do. Now that light squared bishop is going to be able to play f takes, bishop takes, bishop f4. Didn't really want any sacrifices on g3. The knight is covering on c3 in case he's targeting that area. Bishop h3. Bishop finally moves. Now bishop takes, queen takes, and now rook e1, queen c7, knight c5. So as the dust clears, the black's light squared bishop has finally gotten out. But the knight is in a really excellent position here because near the center, it's attacking a6 and it's controlling a lot of squares up by black's center and back. In fact, white is threatening to take here, although that does take some pieces away from the action on the king's side. Rook a e8, and so now it's completely free. I could take with the knight or the bishop. I decided not to take, though, because I was a little worried of their pieces coming down. So queen d2, a5, can't take anymore. Bishop f1, offering to trade the bishops. Bishop f5, and I maneuvered the bishop more to defending the king. Bishop g2. Knight d7, and now white's got a nice tactic here. It is bishop takes d5, check, which wins a pawn. If black decides to take back, this is a mistake. C takes, queen takes, and white can now take advantage of the weak back rank. King's got to go into the corner, and now after rook takes, got to take back, and now the bishop's undefended, and white can take there. five white pawns versus 3 black pawns. And it's black can mess up the pawns there with knight takes knight, queen takes, pawn takes. In fact, black's probably going to win a pawn. Well, actually no, because the weak back rank is still bad. So white could just ignore it and play here. And if black takes, white's got checkmate. So black's got to spend time doing that, and now white holds on to the pawn. It's still a doubled pawn. The kings are going to rush towards the center, but white should win this. Now, if the king just moves away, we don't have all those tactics, because the queen is not going to be on d5. So the biggest threat is that the knight is going to take the white knight and mess up the pawns. If white tries to say take on here, take, and now we got a pin. The bishop cannot move because otherwise the queen will be taken. So I'm going to lose that piece after all if I try to take there. So instead I tried to wriggle out of it. Knight takes, rook takes e8, rook takes e8, rook e1, offering to trade. If black tries to take here and then take the bishop, this is going to lead to mate. So again, that weak back rank is making all these tactics possible. So played bishop g2, and now discovery attack, knight takes c5. So now the rook is hitting the queen, and black's won a piece here. So it looks like I can't take back because then I'll lose my queen. But actually white can play take c5 because again, if the rook takes, this is mate. So I did offer my queen, but black has to play bishop g6. Black has to decline the queen. Bishop g6. Now rook is threatening to take the queen, so I played queen e3. And we can see that white is now up a pawn. There's no more discoveries, no more pins. White's up a pawn. It is doubled though, so it's not that big of an advantage. Rook c8, queen e6. White is still eyeing that back rank, although the e8 square is covered by both the rook and the bishop. White's also putting additional pressure on c6. It's now attacked by both the white queen and the white bishop, so black's got to be careful. Black's got to keep 2 defenders on c6, otherwise white's going to have a nice pass pawn. Bishop f7, and then I play queen d6 just to inch the queen in further, and if he takes, then I'll have a nice pass pawn. And that's what he did, which I think that was the wrong thing to do. I think he should have moved the queen away, maybe to b7, and try to open up that file, because the white king is kind of white king's going to be kind of wide open if the white rook decides to move off the first rank. Black took, white took, and now white's got a very far advanced pawn, and black's got to be really careful here, because if that pawn becomes a queen, black's probably going to have to sacrifice the bishop or the rook for it. So black decides to stop it right away, rook d8, and now here I should have played rook d1, which holds on to the pawn. I'm threatening bishop takes pawn. I don't have to win the pawn. Black could play here, and I'd probably just start pushing this pawn, the c pawn, to support the d pawn. And it's still a long slog because the white has to move their king towards the center. But instead, I played rook e7, which was a mistake, because the idea is if rook takes pawn, black rook takes pawn, then rook takes bishop, and I'll trade a pawn for a bishop any day. But black did not handle it correctly. Black played bishop d5, which loses, because after bishop takes, pawn takes, d7, threatening rook e8 check, which make black take my rook, and then I will queen. And even though black, it won't be checkmate because black could say, play h6 or something like that. It's still, I'm going to be up a queen, a full queen, and then I can pick off pawns, make a second queen if I need to, or just checkmate with king and queen. I got my choice of wins. So what should have black done? Well, black, instead of playing bishop d5, king can just move over to g8. And now the rook is not threatening the bishop anymore. But the rook is attacking the pawn. So if I play d7, then the black king just keeps moving over, and now my rook's under attack. And I can target the a pawn, but I'm going to lose that pawn shortly. And now, even though I still have a passed pawn, I'm still up a pawn. It's a lot further back, and white's got a lot more work to do. White's still better here, but it's not nearly as good a position. But this was the end position. White had just played d7, and black resigned. So I won game 2 as well. So game 3, I'll be back to playing the black pieces, and we'll see if I can continue my win streak.